Welcome to the Success Journey Show. Let's travel together through the lives of individuals on the road to success.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? We are back with you here for another episode of the Success Journey Show. Ricky Venters and Marlon Madden. What's going on, Marlon? How you doing, man?
Nothing much. I'm doing well, man. Everybody
good.
see if you see me clearly on the camera, that means I'm back from Jamaica. I have a
Yes.
great story for you, but we're gonna
man.
hold that in the tuck until a little bit later.
Man.
And let you know how that go. It goes downhill real quick.
Real quick. You see all that gray hair?
Yes, sir.
It's all associated, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All associated. How you doing, Rick?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Can't complain, dude. Things are moving well. Staying consistent. Yeah. I really had to get to a place of, and we're going to talk about it today with our guest. And her phrase she says is everything's going to be okay, right?
Yes,
I really
sir.
had to let that sink in on multiple fronts on my end. Really taking time to just reflect, and gratitude, because you're always looking at, man, I can be here, or I should be here, or I should have this, or I should have this much money in the bank, or my kids should be doing this, or my relationship should be like this. There's always those different things, man. Or I should have a 8-pack. Like all these different things that get you down.
The 8-pack
I should have buns of steel. All those things.
Yes. Hey, we're gonna have to do a Patreon if I really want to talk about what my experience, bro.
Oh man,
we're gonna have to have a Patreon that people are gonna have to pay because it might be not PG.
Yeah, exactly. So man, I feel great, man. In a good place, man, and just continue practicing that stuff every single day.
How's Hit Doctor?
Hit Doctor is amazing. If you are on the show, we have our new website is launched. Check it out. We updated it. hitdoctormd.com or eliteswingtrainer.com. All leads you to the same place where the show is happening. Man, great reception we're getting. I mean, people are loving the tool. I just had another person stop me today and tell me how amazing the tool is, and like, man, he said, I really wish that it did more than this one thing. I said, well, let me tell you what else it does.
you went in your sales bag. I couldn't agree with you more. Do you have a couple minutes of? Can I take a couple minutes of your time to show you how this this apparatus can actually do multiple things?
Thank you, man. He was like, oh my goodness, we're going home to work on this tonight. I was like, yep. So yeah, man, it's just good being able to get that feedback, man. Look, the team is strong. Everyone is great. I mean, guys, we're just really having a good time with it and being patient, right? That's the biggest thing, being patient and building. So going well, man. It's going well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think people are tired of hearing us talk about ourselves and what we're doing. This episode is going to be, just sit back, listen to it. If you're not, just listen to it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
So without further ado,
Pastor, go ahead, Pastor. Go ahead, Elder.
The next voice you will hear after this little break is Andrea MacKenzie. All right, everybody.
Andrea.
We will see you later. Peace.
Peace.
All right, travelers, we are here at our favorite segment of the show, and it's a segment where we bring on a guest and we get to hear the behind the scenes journey to where they are today. And today we have none other than Andrea MacKenzie. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, it is an honor for you to be on our show today. We're really excited. I wish people could see like the green room conversations that we have, because we just go right into it, man, and really make those connections. And it's really good to be able to just sit down and meet you and talk with you. So we got the privilege of hearing a little bit about you. Why don't you share with all of our guests and travelers around the world just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So, my name is Andrea MacKenzie, and I am currently a business owner and entrepreneur. But I think, being that this is the Success Journey podcast, I should probably tell you a little bit about my journey, right?
Yeah.
So we'll start with it was 1970. No, I think if I go back to my earliest memories and why I ended up as an entrepreneur, it really stems from curiosity and sort of challenging everything that came up for me. Everything, and any sort of status quo, I would immediately challenge. Why? And also, I happen to be a creative, so it was like, well, if it doesn't exist, I'll just make it. I'll just create it. I'll draw it. I'll write it. I'll play it. I'll sing it. And so, yeah, I think, although I did fairly well in school, I never quite conformed to exactly what everybody was expecting, and I always wanted to teach the class rather than actually worry about my grades, right? And I, like I said, I did fairly well anyway, but my intention was not to please others. It was to continue to learn and continue to grow. So yes, I grew up in Boston. I went to college prep kind of school, and so everything was about, National Honor Society and what school you're getting into and all these things. And I was like, I don't know. I love to play music. I just want to create stuff.
Yeah.
And so whether this was the smartest thing or not, or the smartest thing in my old Boston, it wasn't wicked smart of me, but I decided that I was going to go to school for some sort of art. And I thought about, graphic design and things like that. But eventually it was like, yeah, I just love to sing. And so I decided I was going to go to LA, and I was going to study music at the University of Southern California. And this was awesome. I was 17. I actually started school a little earlier. So I was 17, had to get special permission to come out and kind of do all that stuff. And what I realize now, looking back on it, like I said, it wasn't necessarily about what ROI am I going to get by going to college, which I think a lot of people really do need to think about. I was privileged to be able to do what I did, and I'm very cognizant of that, right?
Yeah.
But what I quickly understood about music and what it teaches you about teams and learning, and also entrepreneurship, especially as a singer who wanted to go out and get gigs and have my own band, because you're the kind of have to run your own show. I started a record company by the time I was like 17. Now, granted, we're talking about just an entity so that I could make my music and put it out there, right? It wasn't like a profitable endeavor, right? But I learned this idea of how do you create an entity and how do you become a business and all these things, because I didn't want anybody else owning anything that I did. And, you get out of music school, you try to be a musician, and it was right, for me, it was right in the middle of, right before the dot-com boom. So, when I was spending thousands of dollars to create an album, about, I don't know, weeks later, people could do that in their home.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't even know if it was a year later, right? It was like, you can actually copy CDs at home, and you can actually, all these things that I was paying through the nose for and scrounging for. And, I had to get jobs, right? And that's like the most devastating thing as an artist. You're like, well, what am I going to do for money? What am I going to do for work? But at the same time, I was wicked smart. So I would just go and get jobs, and sooner rather than later, I was, sort of like the right-hand person to some of the highest management people at different companies that I was at, and working in pro audio, and kind of went into more of that sound engineering side of things. I understood all the technology behind recording, and that was kind of where it was at, especially in the home studio. And ended up at Sony Pictures doing some post audio work there. like basically coordinating stuff for Blu-ray, which nobody really cares about
Oh,
anymore.
remember that?
It was
Oh,
like
my
so
goodness.
groundbreaking at the time. It
Oh
was
my
like
God.
behind
One
closed
disc,
doors, you know?
one disc was
Yeah.
like $1 million.
And if
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
remembers what a UMD is, you know,
Oh, yeah.
you win the prize, because I was working on those too. I mean, just crazy stuff that like doesn't even exist anymore when you think about it. It's crazy how
Man,
fast it all
wow,
moves.
technology.
But I decided while I was at Sony that I was either going to take a GMAT and go and actually get my MBA, right? Or I was going to write a script, because I had a lot of ideas for scripts. And really it was dictated by, I did well in the GMATs and I got into USC again for business school. And I was like, all right, I want this experience, you know, like bring it on, right? But
Yeah.
was it really was that where my biggest joy in life was going to be? Maybe not, right? The part of me was like, you need a validation card. Girl, you got an MBA, you get an MBA versus a music degree. People are going to start to understand, right? And looking back on it, it's a little bit like, it's kind of sad to me that was required, because you know, there are things I already knew and I take more from what I knew in those 10 years prior to getting the degree, right? Like what I learned from being the unicorn, so to speak, the person who would do the work, the person who would like bring it to every single day, and then not being understood by the people, you know, that part is what I think I know, what I think I use more now than anything I learned in business school, right? I love, I mean, it was good to know. It was nice to know this stuff.
Correct.
And honestly, the relationships I made in business school was like, you know, gold, right? Especially if I wanted to stay in LA, which I am. So I don't regret it by any stretch, but was it me? Right? Is that how I identify? Not so much, right? It's not. I went into consulting because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grow up. Still don't. But I figured, okay, if I do consulting at a large consulting firm for a while, I'll drink from the fire hose.
Something. Yeah.
Become even more valid. You know, and I think again, it's kind of like that's a little bit of that thing that I try to avoid now, to say, oh, you also need this to appear more, you know, qualified or credentialed, or it's just like, give it up already. Like you got more than you need to do whatever you want. And so I think where things really turned for me, I started my business in 2012. So it's been a while. It's been over 10 years. And mainly because I this whole thing of like, you know, working with offshore and the hours and just all the stuff around, you know, I guess working for someone else and that grind and like sort of looking up the ladder at like, you should, I kind of felt like I should want to become like whatever that journey was, right? Speaking of journeys, and I'm like, I don't really want to be those people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of where I was like, all right, do your own thing, right? And so I decided to go on my own as a consultant. And then within a few years, I got myself a business coach, and it was the best thing I ever did. In terms of just the learning and the awareness and what happens when you really find a coach who can help you look inward. And I was like, oh, this is something I want to learn how to do. So I went and actually got certified as a coach, and I'm, you know, ICF credentialed. I could go on about the credentials, but the idea is I wanted to learn that modality. And then as I started to get more into that, I learned about some assessments in terms of psychology and how people work and how you can match people with the kind of work, to realize what it means to have a diverse organization, not just in terms of backgrounds and all these things, but also in terms of neurodiversity and what we bring to the table in terms of strengths and typical and atypical. I'm not even just talking about atypical, just the gamut of what we bring together, you know, in terms of the human brain. And recognizing that people are so different. I think I just really started to get into team leadership, hiring, some of the most amazing opportunities in a business is when you're able to bring somebody on as a new hire, and so I started to really focus on that, and it's been really rewarding, especially after being in IT consulting and process improvement and organizational consulting, where it was all about numbers and, metrics and all that, which I think that stuff's important, right? I'm not saying it's bad, but to dig deeper into how important the people element is to all of that is really where I sort of found my heart. And then also empowering everyone to be a leader. That when we say leadership development, we're not just talking about the 3 people at the top or like a group of CEOs or something, that we're talking about every single one of us.
Correct.
Being leaders and taking responsibility and that kind of thing. And that's how I coach. So.
Oh, I love it.
Was that enough? Was that too much?
No. That was beautiful. That was I'm buying the book tomorrow. So
yeah.
So what the first thing that jumps out at me is, how can parents foster kids that are creatives? Myself as a creative.
Yeah.
So I like you, I'm in the classroom, I'm doing well. But I get in a lot of trouble because my mind is, you know how it is. You're creative and one day you're here and then you're thinking about, oh my goodness, and you're in the classroom and you're thinking and then you're doing this and you don't think that there's the structure that's there. You're just like, that's not for me. You're just like, that structure is not for me. So everybody's going right. You're going right with them, but you're left first. So you're like the last person to go into the way.
Yes.
So how do parents foster those creatives to bring out whatever they have inside of them to be, you said you wanted to be a musician, but you it's always put aside like, oh, that's not going to make you any money, or that's not going to do this, or that's not going to do this. Let's go this. How do you think parents can assist, or how would you think that parents would assist in those kids that are creative? What ideas would you give to them?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. I struggle with this myself because on one hand, there's a lot of things for parents. And let me just start with this. I am not a parent, but I am like super auntie. So, and I think that it comes from like a very different perspective that is useful in a lot of ways. But I'm in no way here telling anyone how to parent their children. So let's just put that disclaimer out there, right? Everyone's doing their best. I believe that, right? So if you notice that your child is into something, and actually I almost want to broaden this not just to creativity but into something you don't necessarily understand, right? Because creativity, everyone is creative in my mind. The way people are creative, it gets put into these buckets like, okay, if you're not into music, you're not creative. Well, people into science are very creative, and people who build things are very creative, right? But they may not put it in that same category. So I would say if you're noticing that your kid is into something that is different from what you understand or different from what they're able to do or what they're exposed to in school, help them get exposed. I mean, it's so complicated because this thing, like, you don't know the things that you're not exposed to. So sometimes the thing that would be so perfect for you, it's just sitting over here on the sidelines because no one's saying like, this is an option or this is something you could do. And it's kind of frustrating. So I guess as you watch your child explore and see what lights them up, just be open that it could be something that you've never even exposed to, right? So like, just keep opening the doors, like, why do you want to go there? Why do you keep picking up the hammer or the crayon or the, what are you doing here? Like, let's keep going. Let's see what else happens, right? That exploratory discovery kind of thing that doesn't always happen in school or naturally with parents. That's the thing, right? And as the exploration happens, be open to it really being anything, like if somebody says, oh, I'm interested in being creative, and the immediate thing is like, oh, let's give them a crayon, but really their creativity is like building models or You know what I mean?
Correct.
Now so explore and, keep exposing your kids to as many things as you can and see where they like light up and go, ooh,
Yeah.
that could be really fun,
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
I couldn't agree.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Rick.
No, you're good.
No, I was gonna say, I couldn't agree with you more. Just little synopsis about my son Jay. And if you're listening to this, Jay, I gotta use you, bro. So Jelani, when he graduated high school, he never had no problem with school. Jelani is my son that he's gonna have the room clean. He's gonna look neat. He's gonna do this. He's gonna do this. He's gonna do that. He's gonna wake up. He's gonna go to bed early. He's programmed that way by himself. But when he did school, he said he did his first year. I noticed that his first 2 years of college, he loves music. He plays, writes, and all right. So I said, Jay, after the first 2 years, Jay, we're not gonna waste your time and money just saying go to college just to go to college. Let's explore what you want to do. He did his music thing for a while. Then I said, hey, bro, you notice that every musician moonlights. Because the reality of life is that a lot of creatives can forget that the world still turns and that certain things have to happen, bills and all these different
or they
things.
live in their cars. It's like one or the other.
Or they live in their car. There you go. There you go. So eventually he still does music. I still push him and say, hey, when I text him, hey, how's your music going? He's 20 something now, at 23 right now. Hey, 22. How's your music going? How's your stuff going? Yep, you're doing well, man. Job's going well. Yep. Hey, make time for your music. I push that. I put that because I know sometimes a lot of creatives, not just musicians, creatives in any one of those boxes that you place in, they'll forget about what they're doing because society tells them to do one thing. So you're absolutely right. Just keep exploring. Rick.
Yeah. No, I wanted to go back in your story because, as a creative and as a musician, I know you have a passion. And when you had to make that pivot, right? And I'm going to call that kind of one of that first realization of, all right, there's something else I need to do, right? And you say you went and try to find work, right? But talk about what that did to kind of your psyche, right? As you're going through battling, hey, I want to put more time on my music and my band and traveling and going singing in this gig and that gig, versus, man, I have to show up to this 9 to 5 and work here. Is that hurting me? Could I, is that taking away time for me developing as a singer? If I could devote more time to it, like talk about that battle, right? That internal battle of trying to find the lane, and not just find your lane, find yourself really in that.
Yeah. Ugh. It's crushing, right? Like,
yeah.
So, music's an interesting, in particular, an interesting industry because how you make money at music, even people who have been making money at music for years are stumped on this, right? It's something that, there are certain paths you can take and so on and so forth, and just keep hammering away at it and keep making the connections and so on and so forth to get, into sync or to get, on the big stages or whatever these things are. There's a lot of compromise there. And I think what I started to realize pretty quickly, actually, late teens, early 20s, coming out of school, is that I wasn't willing to compromise on a lot of things. Like there were serious values conflicts. Like, for example, probably could have lived in my car and continued to make connections with people and put myself in dangerous situations. And I had put myself in especially as a female in the music industry. Like you're compromising a lot. And people, I'm not getting down on anybody who's willing to do those things. I think it's, it takes a lot of guts and all of these things. I think for me, I didn't realize until later. I wasn't able to kind of put that in perspective until later. Like the grief I had over losing certain part of like a dream that I had, right, was pretty significant and actually caused a lot of negativity in my head that I had to undo later. But that's also a journey, right? There's something to be, learned from that. And then I was still also tapping into something very real about me, because I already said very quickly within like a year of like trying to get these gigs and putting these bands together, I was like, I need a business. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
immediately I was already thinking entrepreneur.
yeah.
And you know, again, in hindsight, like I don't necessarily think I was this aware as it was going on, so I could get into how dark it really got in a few places where I felt, you know, a lot of really negative things and stories were going on in my head that I could rehash if we wanted to go there. But really, I think in hindsight, it's like I was still being true to myself, because I wanted to empower myself to have, you know, this kind of education that I have, and to be able to make a difference in the way I can now. And I couldn't necessarily see that. The other thing I remember, going back to my childhood again, really early on, and this is a really like specific memory, but I remember it very clearly, as I was like we were driving down the street, it was like a highway or something, and I was looking at all these buildings, and I was looking at every single building, and I was realizing that's a business, that's a business, that's a business, that's a business. And I kept thinking to myself, I bet you a man owns that. I bet you another man owns that one. I bet you another man owns that one. And I'm telling you, I was really little when I had that realization. And part of it was just seeing how my father had worked with his clients and who they were. They, you know, he's also an entrepreneur. And again, going back to that memory, I think that was what, maybe it was my future self coming back to me. I don't know the kind of things you guys believe in, you know what I mean? But there's like this about one moment that I was like, oh, there's something to be said for helping more women be, you know, leaders of businesses, business owners, and all of this, that I was meant to do really young, and to set an example for my nieces and, you know, the people in my life. So it all come full circle. But yeah, there were some dark moments. I'm not gonna lie, Ricky. Know, when you think you're going a certain place, and you've got the people in your life who are, you know, getting nominated for Grammys, and all these things are happening, and I'm in LA, and all these things are happening around me, and I felt still on the fringe somehow. It was devastating to say, you know, let's try something different. Let's create something new. I still write music. I still produce music. I still have my music and sync libraries and so on, but it's not what I'm, you know, and part of it also is identity. Right. How do you identify? And I think at this point in my life, in my late 40s, which is crazy, I'm finally starting to sort of integrate all of it. I'm all of these things, and that's fine. And I think for the younger listeners who are like, I need to figure out exactly who I am, it's like, no, you're going to have so many identities that you identify with and want to be at different times. And it's fine to continue to reinvent yourself. Like sometimes I look forward into my life and I'm like, who am I going to be as an old lady? That could be kind of fun. Like, farmer, like, what am I going to be? Like, you can be anything, you know? And
you're so right. You're so right. But, you know, I would like to say, you know, I really appreciate you saying that and just being real about kind of the dark times that come with it, because, you know, a lot of people, we go through life, and every single day we're trying to figure out, one, am I on the right path? Am I doing what I should be doing? What is my purpose? I have desires, but they're not becoming realized, you know, and, you know, we talk about not quitting, not giving up. But then there's also that reality part where maybe sometimes you need to pivot, right? And pivot's not quitting, it's not giving up. It's just more so, hey, how do I deal with the here and now? And the reason why I asked you, and I was able to, you know, talk to you directly about that, because I know in the green room, you know, we were talking about, Marlon was sharing that we've done music as well, and it's a part of who we are, right? You know, music is a part of my mental health, right? We talk about mental health. Like I will sit down at the piano, and I need to do that to release. Like it's a part of my DNA, I would say, right? So, like as you said, you know, you didn't know that it wasn't until you were older and looking back retrospectively of saying, wow, a seed was planted into me a long time ago about this whole business thing, right? But it wasn't until you started to open yourself up to the possibility that, man, there may be something else that I need to explore, that you realize that, man, my purpose, yeah, music is part of my journey and part of my work, but it may not have been my direct purpose at this time in my life, right? And being willing to kind of be, like you said, being okay to go with that journey and have your identity evolve, right? To the person that you should be. And the question I have in following up with that is, you know, or I would say, if you can talk to that person right now that is, you know, in that valley of decision, and the decision is this: they feel if they make the decision to step away and pivot, that they're going to lose who they are, and they're going to feel lost, and they going to feel like quitting and giving up because they put so much time, energy, or passion. They've been playing basketball every day, playing football every single day, doing sports every single day, doing music every single day, trying engineering, you know, and it's just not there. Like, talk to that person that's just sitting there right now that has to make a decision of, man, I got to make something happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure. The answer to the universe. No. Well, I mean, I think you touched on a lot of things there, right? What am I saying to the person who's kind of in the pit of despair around, I may need to let go of something huge that I've always wanted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, dare I use the word faith in a in the context of anything these days, right? But and I'm not talking about religion. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about faith, right? Like, true faith. A lot of people, the minute you say that word, they will like cringe and be like, that's not me, you know what I mean? But I think it's an important thing to lean into, because this concept of what our purpose is, this is my opinion, so I'm not like out here trying to preach this, but it's like, I don't think we'll ever know. The grand scheme of things is that you have a purpose, and that's given to you, right? Like, you don't know if what you're doing today has now enabled somebody else to do something great. You don't know. We don't know. Like, to sit around trying to figure out what our purpose is, like, it's kind of like, no, just have faith that you have one and move on, right? It's okay, you have one. You know, and I think that's part of it too, is like, your worth is not in that. It's already there intrinsically. You are whole, perfect, complete, exactly as you are right now, right? So those are the kind of beliefs, like, again, when we talk about things like leadership and self-responsibility and taking the next step you need to take, this is a great example of one, right? So if somebody was in that moment of feeling that pit of despair, am I making that choice, and so on and so forth, I would say you really have to look inward and try to get rid of all the voices and all the things that you're afraid someone else is going to think, say, do, if and when you made this choice, right? If that's fueling your decision, like, everybody will think this or that, whatever. I mean, that's just noise, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Right. And like, a great example, and I keep using this example, like living in your car, right? Live in your car. If like, ultimately, you know, in your heart of hearts that you need to go pursue something that requires you to do that, right? Like, I'm not advocating for people to do that. I know that sounds crazy, but like, I'm just saying, like, you know, inside yourself, if the reason you're not doing that is because of what someone else will think versus what you really believe you need to go pursue in your life. You only get one shot at life. Okay. That all being said, and sounding like it's the end all be all, if you take a wrong turn for a few minutes, the world's not going to end either. Sometimes you have to go explore this other thing for a little bit and leave the door open and say, I'm giving this 6 months, or I'm giving this a year, or I'm giving this 5 years, whatever it is, right? Because I'm getting this kind of desire and this kind of push to go explore this other thing. And if it's coming from a place of fear, a place of I have to, I should, people will think this, tread very lightly, right? Because that's not where it's at. If it's coming from a place of true desire, like for me, there was a desire to want to be a businesswoman, to have a business that was making money, right? There was definitely a desire there. That was not inauthentic for me, right? if it's coming from a place where you're like, I want to go see if like try that on for a little while, right? Like, and it's okay. I can still play music, and this can be that, and I think that was part of it for me too. Was like how wrapped up in the music identity I really was. That it was like oh my God, you're so great at this, and the love and the adoration you get when you come off of a stage after playing a great show, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of addictive, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like who I was and what I was going to do, and so many people believed in it. That's where I think I was getting from the outside vision of like, oh, I failed. People all these things, and there really is no such thing as failure. And that's one of the things like about this idea of your show, the concept being about the journey being the success, right? If that's the case, there's no journey, there's no end, there's no fail, there's no right. You're just trying things on, and you just keep going.
Yeah.
What would I say to those people? You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whatever you do, you're going to be okay. But check in, like, is this truly me making this decision, or is it based on something coming from out here?
Yeah.
You know, outside myself, or some victim energy around this happened to me, so I can't, or all that kind of stuff. That's what coaches help people uncover. That's what I help people uncover for themselves.
Yeah.
Man, ladies and gentlemen, we did not send her those answers, so you'll feel like, man, you guys set her up with them good. We did not send her those questions. She answered them, and I'm telling you, I'm loving every second of it, especially when you say, you're going to make a wrong turn. Don't worry about it. Turn somewhere else. That's correct, right? Parents, we're not telling you how to, you raise your children how you want. I have not asked one of my kids, but I have two younger ones, 11 and 7. What do you want to be when you grow up? I'm not asking them that question, because how does an 11-year-old know what he wants to be when he grow up? And I'm 45, and I'm constantly, I could do this. Well, I could do that. I could do this. And you're asking somebody to make a decision at 11 years old. Oh, I want to be a doctor. And you're pushing that person. All you want to be, what do you think, right? My son loves basketball. I train him in basketball, but basketball is not what the journey is what's more important for me than him making it to the NBA. The journey is hard work and dedication.
Yeah.
And what we talk about on our show, we have our quad Ds: dream, drive, discipline, and diligence. And we believe if you put that in any area of your life, you'll be successful, correct? Now let's talk about your first time you went and you said, okay, let me create this LLC, sole proprietor, or whatever you created when you said you're going to create that record company. What did you learn in business? Because at that time you probably had to, just like I did. I don't know when you did it, but you had to do paper. You had to set it into the to that state, whatever. To do it. It wasn't online. I don't know if it was online. So tell us that experience, and what did you learn about business at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't predate the internet, right? Like, I mean, I'm not that old, but it predates things like that happening on the internet, right?
Yeah,
so
correct.
So yeah, I remember too. I decided to go with a sole proprietorship. So it was like the least, you know, the I don't know what the word is, the least entity of entities, right? It was just me, really. And I made the name Crying Wolf Records, because I was always into wolves. I always loved wolves. And thought of myself as sort of a lone wolf, truly. And I remember having to publish it in the paper, which was really interesting, like in a physical newspaper. It's just so funny. It's so funny you're asking this, because I'm like, wow, it's so funny to think back on. And I was making CDs, so I had to go get like I think it was on some kind of like weird floppy, not a floppy disk, but one of those other, like, I can't even remember what you said.
Zip disk.
Yeah.
And it had like a UPC code that I had to register for to put on there. And then the most exciting part for me was the State Board of Equalization and in getting like tax exempt. I didn't have to pay taxes on. I was like, this is great. I like this part. And then the hard part was actually selling them. But it's funny. I made my money back on the actual physical goods pretty quickly. It was more about, I understood how to at least break even, but yeah, I was just playing a lot of shows and even then it was like paying the people that were in my band and just basically foregoing any payment myself, right? It was like those kind of things I was doing. And, it was fun to play at a lot of different places. And I played with some great musicians. A lot of those guys I played with are now playing with like some of the biggest names out there. And I'm like, who am I? but it's great to see them grow and do what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about, just business and putting things in numbers on the table and how do you, that kind of stuff.
At 17.
Yeah, I was like 17 or 18 at that point. Well, 17 I started school.
Yep. So
I think I was like 18 or 19. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And as you've grown now, you said 2012 you started going into this whole area of leadership, right? You were blessed to be able to work with some prominent people as you was growing in your career, right? MBA, all this good stuff, and you're starting your own business now. What stood out to you when when you launched your own thing now in this whole leadership thing? Because it's now you're becoming a consultant yourself, right? And you gotta get clients, all these different things. Like talk to us about what that looked like for you in the beginning years.
Well, the very beginning, I knew I had a client, right? So it's kind of like, I knew I was going to be okay starting up right away. I knew I had people I could go and work with as a consultant, which made it nice. And then I could kind of develop what I was offering over time. And like I said, as I got a business coach and then kind of learned this modality of coaching, and then I picked up these different sort of assessments I would work with. My Kolbe assessments are big for me. It's, again, how people work. It's very sort of objective. It's not personality based, like understanding that people are different and how they work. All that kind of stuff started to come together. Now I just finished a certification in applied neuroscience because I'm very interested in the brain. Like as I start to develop who I am and how I work with teams and people hiring and entrepreneurs who want to develop their teams, it just keeps evolving. I think what's sort of next for me is to write, because what's really interesting for me in this whole journey, right, is like remembering who I was as a small child again. The one consistent thing was always that I was always writing, like not even it was like breathing. I always writing. Then when I was in that crossroads of, do I write a script or do I write, like, am I writing songs or am I, it's all, I'm always writing something. And I've started to really think that some of the ideas and concepts that I've sort of honed over the last like 5 to 10 years are now ready to be put in some sort of form. But I don't know when that would be or what that looks like. But I feel like what Lead with Harmony, my business, what the idea there is to really help people become leaders, help people develop teams that are performing well, but also focusing on well-being at the same time, right? Like that thing that seems to almost be like they're like the opposite of each other. I don't think they need to be. I think they can kind of grow together. You can be a proponent for well-being, a proponent for growth for everyone, as well as the business itself. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it grew. But I started knowing that you had had some things I could line up, and that was it. So
now, one thing I wanted to ask you was the transition from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's a change in itself, right? Even to LA. I know LA is, probably a little bit more faster paced now than it was when you moved out there. But even coming back, visiting on the East Coast if you come back. Tell us the difference in maybe who you had to evolve into as you're moving into this new territory.
Whew. I mean, I really believe I have both the East and West in me in very strong ways.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I go back to Boston a lot, actually. I go back to the East a lot, and I have clients in other places like Ohio and other places on the East Coast. I think the thing that I really was craving from growing up in Boston and like the northern part of Boston, like north of Boston, was more
Worcester, something like that. What is it?
No, I grew up in Medford, Massachusetts.
Oh, Medford. Okay,
yeah, north of Cambridge and Somerville.
Okay.
And I think what I was craving the most was like sort of diversity. And it's not to say that diversity doesn't exist, because it does, especially now. I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, right? Like that's how crazy that is, right? But the way things were so separated and like back when I was growing up, like I went to Catholic school, like all of that, I didn't see it around me. It was there, but I wasn't exposed, right? For better or worse, whatever that is. And then coming to USC and like they've looked to put diversity in front of you, but then I studied jazz, so I was the white girl studying jazz, which is so wrong on so many levels. Like, but I loved it so much, and like my closest, like one of my biggest mentors was a year older than me, and was this like just a powerhouse African-American woman that like I just to this day love her to no end. Would I have met her in this life in Boston? Like it's like even the diversity in my dorm, where like 2 floors above me was sort of like the sort of gay bi lesbian association like floor, and I was like, all these people, I was so happy to like just see people that weren't like me, and just sort of exploring all of that. And again, I'm sure if I had gone to college in like, I'm not trying to put that down, like it would have still been there. College is a place where a lot of that stuff happens. But I think that even the neighborhoods in LA, like I lived in Chinatown for a while, like it's just like all the stuff that I absorbed here. And I don't know, you're right. There's a bit of a slower pace. I love the beach because of that. I remember family members coming out to meet me when I used to go to all the jazz clubs and stuff. And we would just sit and like listen to music for hours, and we wouldn't worry about when the check was coming. And like they come out and be like, "Where's the check? Why is it taking so? Why are we?" And I'm just like, "Chill,
just relax. That's a little music. That's cool.
Chill. Like we're just hanging out. It doesn't have to be about what's next and when does the check come and like all these things." So I don't know. I just think that, again, this is just my one little story. So I'm not trying to put down anything on the East Coast. The thing I love about the East Coast is just like, it is very much like about, achievement and like the where I was in terms of the schooling I was in and stuff. I mean, I think it gave me a lot. It prepared me for a lot. Am I a Catholic? No. it confirmed that for me. Sorry, hopefully that doesn't offend anyone. But I mean, it's not to say that I have so many friends and family who are. I'm not trying to put that down either. But it's like you just, again, what you're exposed to helps you realize whether it's for you or not. Is it a fit or not? And so I got to explore a lot of things from being exposed to both coasts, I guess, is the point.
Favorite jazz musician?
Or
singer? Come on,
Ella Fitzgerald. One of the absolute best musicians of all time. Doesn't matter if you're talking about singers or instrumentalists, doesn't matter. She just, for some reason, just inspired me on every single level. Like nice performance, ability to improv, like just what she could hear, like just every time I listen to her, it just blows my mind to this day. But there's so many. It's
Especially the list goes on.
List goes on.
You have musicians, you have singers, you have all that stuff. Go ahead, Marlon.
And I know you pointed out helping or just emphasizing women in business and being that beacon of light that's saying, hey, girls, we could do this. To your journey, and I know you have nieces, but in the business space, how have you impacted those women in business, and what do you tell them in order to get them to that next step, or to believe in themselves, or even if they're believing in themselves, how to get to that next step, next level?
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of men, so let's just put it that way, right? There's still a lot of men in my there's a lot of men in my world. But when I am blessed with the woman who comes my way, I think that one of the things that, and again, I don't want to stereotype anything, because there's a lot of men that fall in this category too, and maybe it's the type of entrepreneur in general, or a leader who sort of is attracted to me. But I think what I'm excited about, or what I try to, work with them on the most, is how do they grow their organizations and really focus on people and bring that sort of female perspective, again, whether they're male or female, right? But like sort of like the more traditionally, nurturing sort of that sort of perspective into growing an organization. So at some point, when an entrepreneur is starting out, the main thing they typically care about, unless they've got like a huge fund and they can create an organization right away. Usually they're all about sales. Like the sales is what's driving. Let's get the sales. Let's bring in the customers. As soon as they get to that point where they're like, all right, that's steady. Now I got to grow my organization. And to me, that's just the most beautiful part working with any entrepreneur, but with women in general. It's like a lot of times they have these visions for these cultures where it is more equitable and it is more about who people are and helping people grow, that they're extending that same brand that they're extending to their customers, to their people, and trying to make that grow. And not all women are like that. So right, like these are the women that I like to work with, right? And these are the women that I want to help move forward, because I feel like that's so needed. And it's so needed, again, in terms of just setting the example that women can do that. Women can do that.
Yeah, I love it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love it, man. This has been, Andrea, I love your story. I love what you're doing. I love your purpose you're living in today, right? I definitely believe that like, as we all have experienced, especially creatives have a knack of reinventing themselves multiple times in their lifetime, because it's always seeing problems and having that unique ability to solve it in a unique way that we can adapt to. And it's really a pleasure to just hear how you have grown over the years, and how you have, accepted just the shift and just repurposing your talents, right, and your gifts, right, to where now people will ask, oh, how can someone that that's creative and musician, all that kind of do well in this lane of business and things of that nature. And it's I always, and I want to hear your answer, but before you answer, I said I always equate it to, especially when you're a musician. As a musician, you're tasked to understand how to take compose or to create feelings through what you're producing, right? To draw in a multitude of ears, right, into one place, and orchestrate it in a way to that people leave with the expression, being impressed in a way to where they feel that they were part of, right, what you compose. Like you are part of that music. Oh man, this was just me, everything about me. And when you think about that, you think about leadership, you think about identifying people's strengths and how coaching people and things of that nature, you're still orchestrating, right? I'm orchestrating. I'm understanding who you are. I'm understanding what you do. I'm understanding how you fit into the world this way based off of what you share with me. And now let's compose something together, right? And that's just how I see it. I just top of my head here. But how would you say your creative nature has really helped support your success in your current endeavors?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, surprisingly, as I think about it, I know a lot of very successful entrepreneurs who are musicians. So I think there is, I mean, I don't know. I'm not just trying to say like there's absolutely a link, right? But I mean, a lot of people, oh yeah, and a lot of people play music. So I mean, that's another thing, right? But just play it. But there's a difference between, being a concert pianist too, and like writing music and improvising and that kind. And so I think one of the things I just want to say in general, and going back to this idea that people do things very differently, right? And that's one of the things that I help people see from an objective perspective is some people approach problem solving in very different ways. And sometimes we get stuck on like, this is the way because I'm a planner. You must have a plan. Well, no, actually, some people actually will do really poorly if they have a plan. I can show you who those people are and why, right? But all of a sudden, people start to get all freaked out, right? Like, so it's like, it's the same thing with music. Like some people, if you don't give them the written music in front of them and they can't read it and play it, they're dead in the water. Whereas like other people, if you say, here are the chord changes, go, they're dead in the water, right? Like, or they're going. That's my style, right? just go, sing something, do something, right? It's the same thing in business, in problem solving in business, and how people approach work. And the more we can understand that, right, that this person can play the same music essentially as this person, but you have to approach them in a different way, and they have to know themselves enough to know what they need in order to do the way they do it, right? So that's the connection, the metaphor, right? In some level, I could see a lot of metaphors, right? Trading fours, right? Listen, respond, right? Like, okay, actually listen. Okay, really, really listen. Now respond, right? So like, there's lots of leadership things I could put into that kind of metaphor. But what is music and studying music given me? Okay. I think one of the things looking back on, you said something earlier, I'm trying to recall exactly what it was, something about desire, right? Like what we desire, a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't deserve to have the thing I want, or that's frivolous, or like the things that keep lighting you up and you're like, but I should do something else instead, right? We keep poo-pooing the things we really want and desire, things that light us up. And for me, I just wanted to play music, and unlike you, Marlon, my family was like, well, you're just going to have to go to school for it because you're going to college, kind of thing, right? Like, instead of me being like, I'm just going to go on the streets and try to play music, they were like, no. You're going to college, right? And again, it worked out great, right? What the gift was that I was able to do that, again, I realize that's a privilege, right? Is that I didn't realize that during those 4 years, I was going to go through some of the most emotionally complicated, like grief, like all this stuff that was about to come down on me in those years, those young formative years. And I don't need to get into what that was, but just trust me, it was like probably the most like game-changing stuff that was going to happen to me in my life. If I wasn't studying music and I wasn't doing what I loved, if I hadn't followed that passion, I don't know if I would have made it, because I just loved it. And that was the gift that came from that weird, ill-advised, dumb, not wicked smart thing of going to school for music, right? I got through college, right, because of that. Did the universe tell me this? No, right? But in hindsight, right? So what did following my desire and seeing how that all played out later on in my life, it just teaches you to go follow what lights you up, right?
Yeah.
As a leader, that's what it taught me. Music itself and what music is, you can relate creativity to almost everything. Like I said, I know every human being is creating something. I know that, whether you identify as a creative because we put us in this bucket of musicians and painters and whatever, fine. But everyone's creating. If they're creating a plan, they're creating, right? I don't create plans. I do, but like the point is we're all creating. So for me, learning about music, I learned teamwork I learned how to lead. I learned how to listen. I learned all these things that I can equate. But is it any more magical than any other journey someone else has been through? Probably not. They were meant to have the journey they were meant to have.
Amen. I love it. I love it,
man. Man,
I love it.
Rick, this one right here, this podcast, we've done a lot of podcasts, and I'm not. We often say that this one right here is very. It's like people are. I know, I don't want to go to church and say if it's only one that hears this one is right. But this is what people need to hear. Andrea.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that it's connecting with you and the people listening, and it's been so much fun just chatting with you guys. Right?
Yeah, this is definitely what people want to hear. I know we're coming to an end. I want to steal Ricky's thunder. He's gonna ask that last question. Of course, he's gonna give you a chance to let people connect with you. I really appreciate you just opening up, telling us. I know if this was a podcast that went on for 2 hours, we'd be able to talk about some other stuff. But thank you for what you're doing. And I'm sure when you go into a organization to assist them in a leadership position and helping them grow, that they're getting a very competent person that's not only thinking about just the business structure and setting up a plan, but actually seeing the people that are in that organization and looking at the humanistic side of the business in order to help that business to truly grow, because that's how a business truly grows. And I want to thank you for that portion, because a lot of people are just so rooted in what you're saying, those analytics, those datas, those numbers, and they often miss that humanistic side of what's needed to make that company grow. To you, Ricky.
Yeah, Andrea, this has been a great time with you, and we want to give you the opportunity to kind of share with our guests where they can find you. There may be some companies that are out there that need you to come in and work with their teams, or individuals, or whatever it may be. Can you share that information with them now?
Sure. So leadwithharmony.com is my website. You can join my mailing list there, where a lot of times I'll send, my blogs and things like that. And then LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me as well, because I have a newsletter up there, and I might be lagging a little bit lately. I've been extremely busy, and but it'll come back at some point. And I'd say read, if you're interested in some of these things we're talking about in terms of leadership and team development and hiring, I think my blog is a good place to look. And I say that in a way where I put a lot of effort into what I write. And it's not just any old blog. Like it's worth looking at, and that's right there on leadwithharmony.com. You can see the little blog button at the top. So
love it. Your name, company names have come a long way.
Yeah. From Crying Wolf to Lead with Harmony.
I love it. Lead with Harmony. I love it. Well, man, this has been a phenomenal show. We want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for just allowing us to just pick your brain and hear your story. Many people, like we said in the beginning, a lot of people see where you are today, but just don't know the journey and the heartaches that it will take to get there. And with that, I'll ask you one last closing question here. And the question is, if you can go back to a point in life, maybe that 17-year-old Andrea that left Boston and traveled across the nation to LA, and you had 60 seconds to just sit down and speak to her while did you fly over or did you drive? Did you fly or drive? What did you do?
I flew the first time.
All right. So there we go. So we're in the airport. You're sitting down, waiting to board the plane, and you happen to go over there and sit down next to her. What would you say? Yeah, 60 seconds to talk to her.
It's funny because now that you asked me if I flew or drive, the first thing I would tell her is, don't think you're going to live in LA without a car. Don't get on that bus you got on in Hollywood that day. Do not do
it. Oh my gosh.
That was scary, man. Do not do that.
Oh my goodness.
End up in Compton.
Yeah.
The girl who goes to LA at 17 with no car, she's in trouble. That's definitely in trouble. That's why I drove across the second time.
Oh, there you go. Bring that car over.
Okay, in all honesty, same thing I said before. Everything's gonna be okay. It's really gonna be okay.
Yeah.
You know, don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry about stuff.
Love it. Well, hey guys, that's the show. We want to thank you, Andrea, for hanging out with us on the Success Journey show. We want to thank everybody else that tuned into this episode here. Like Marlon and I always say, you could check us out every single week at the same place, the same time on the Success Journey show. Everyone have a good one.
You've been listening to the Success Journey Show, where your dreams, drive, determination, and diligence are the foundation to success. For more information, check out thesuccessjourneyshow.com. The Journey Squad is here helping you to your destination.